I might never have discovered if I just had a preconceived idea about China and never visited. So I feel like someone with a lucky ticket.
China is the future.
我中国觉得，
大家好，我是周期社记者李佳悦，我现在呢是在世界中国学大会的现场，外国嘉宾他们是何时种草中国学研究的，在这背后有没有什么小故事？今天小新带你一探究竟。
I was a weird kid. I like drawing maps, and I always drew Chinese dynasties. Also read a lot of Chinese novels, like《水浒传》《三国演义》just my favorite since I was a kid.
可能是一种缘分吧，也看了一些中国的电视剧，比如说《西游记》《渴望》。
月亮表达我的心，说中文，我感觉让我非常开心。
I became interested in studying Chinese because I had the opportunity to in 1979, and at that point Deng Xiaoping had just started the new reforms, and so it was in the media in New Zealand a lot that China was opening up, China was there, and it had this funny script, characters, so exotic, and I thought, okay, let's try that.
I started studying China around 5 years ago when I was preparing to give the exam of the foreign service of my country, which is Chile. I had to study about China, and this was actually the first book I ever read about China. This is the book that actually inspired me to become a Chinese specialist.
从古典名著到现代影视，从古老文明到现代风貌，最初的种草或许源于好奇与偶然，但持续的深耕往往需要更深层次的发现。这是一个从走进中国到走进中国的历程。
I studied Chinese history, especially reading Red Star Over China, Edgar Snow. So of course his chapters about the Long March were very exciting to my young mind, and then later I couldn't believe that I would end up, walking over the Bridge of Chains or literally walking up over the Jiajinshan and through the grasslands. I ended up doing all of those things myself. So this was a life dream.
Because it's so different to European languages, and so it seemed sort of mysterious and difficult to understand how it would actually work, partly because of the lack of an alphabet. I wanted to understand how the language worked.
I had worked previously in the U.S. government. I had worked previously around the world, and I had simply come to China. It became sort of clear to me that China knew something that other people didn't know. And so then I wanted to figure out what that was. So when I went back to the United States to start my PhD, I started studying the political philosophy of China. I began to see the real, true, deeper meaning in Chinese Marxism. I would say that my initial interest in China was a little superficial, but then it became a little more substantial, and then it became very substantial. And now, I'm a permanent resident. I live in China full time. I've raised my children here. So at this point, I'm basically Chinese.
So it was just a bit of curiosity, and then once you start studying about China, I think it's very hard to escape because it's so interesting.
当研究贯通古今，当视角融通中外，在这条学术之路上，每一位探索者都是连接中国与世界的桥梁。
China is very experienced about learning the wisdom of the West. The West needs to do a much better job learning the wisdom of China. I believe China is the future, and I think that China is the only country that can provide the right resistance, but also the right solutions to many of the problems that are being created by the United States.
Westerners don't understand China is the extent to which they become fearful because they see China rising and they become scared of it because they don't understand it. And there's plenty of propaganda saying, look, China's the danger, it's going to do harm the world and so on. So it's very, very important that we spread and develop and expand China, i.e. China study.
I've always been interested in China as a major state, of course. It's an important part to play in the world. But as I say, today China has reached a stage of maturity, and in a very turbulent world, we do look for China to provide leadership. So we look to Chinese leadership, an example of how development and peaceful initiatives can develop.
China, it's a chance to see what the world is becoming, but at the same time realize that your eyes are seeing what the world is becoming, but your feet are grounded in ancient culture.